Hi, and welcome back to my channel, Enhance Fitness with Sean. Here's a health and wellness tip about Alzheimer's. Now, if you know anyone who's had Alzheimer's, you know it's a devastating disease. It comes with progressive memory loss to the point where they may not even recognize you, and progressive loss of function. So, unfortunately, it's uncurable, and it remains uncurable. But I'll tell you in a moment why I'm so excited about the new research that was just presented at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, and that has also been written up in JAMA. That's the Journal of the American Medical Association. First of all, my disclaimer: I'm not a doctor. I'm a dance teacher and a fitness instructor. But I work with older people, and when we're in class in our studio, there's a point where we finish our cardio, we get some water, we put on our weights, and at that point I often bring up little health and wellness excerpts, things that are particularly important to the older generation, which are the people that I work with. And there's so much interesting research done on aging and on the diseases of aging that there's nearly always something that we can talk about. But in class, we don't have more than a couple of minutes just to mention that there's been some research, or that I might say I had read something, or somebody else might bring into the room that they had read something interesting. So these health and wellness tips are really a chance to delve in a tiny little bit more detail. But hopefully they'll just give you enough information that you'll go and do some research yourself. I'm certainly not trying to replace research. This is not exhaustive research that I've done, but just some really interesting news that I had just recently read about. So, when people begin to show signs of memory loss in older age, and they go to the doctor at that point has not a lot of tools at their disposal to tell you whether what you have is going to become Alzheimer's, or whether it's some other kind of dementia, or a Parkinson's, or something else to do with aging. And there's not a lot of tools that they have to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. Right now, the only definitive way of finding out if someone had Alzheimer's disease is after they're dead, and they do a brain biopsy, autopsy, and they find in the brain these amyloid plaques. And amyloid is a protein that forms a plaque in the brain and progressively creates dysfunction and messes with the memory in the brain. But the other thing that they find in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease is tau protein. That's T-A-U, tau protein. And these form these kind of tangled clumps that end up in the plaque as well. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. Knowing that that's there, and they can see that on autopsies of people with Alzheimer's, how do they diagnose Alzheimer's if you're alive? Yet generally it has to be fairly far progressed, and once you've got fairly advanced Alzheimer's, a physician, a doctor, can usually say, oh, this looks like Alzheimer's. They can also do expensive tests such as PET scans, where you go in the machine, and they can also do MRIs, or they can do a spinal tap where they take some cerebral spinal fluid and they look for amyloid protein. But these tests are expensive, and if someone's easily agitated, they might not like being in the PET scan machine. So it would be much, much better if there was a different way to diagnose Alzheimer's definitively. And that's what these researchers from the University of Sweden have come up with. They think that within the next 2 to 3 years, when they've finalized all their tests and their error checking, that the test they have is a simple blood test. And it tests for that tau protein that I just mentioned. Now, in the past, there were blood tests that looked for amyloid protein, and I told you how the plaque in the brain is an amyloid plaque. It's amyloid protein. But you can have amyloid protein in your blood, and it doesn't always correspond with the onset of Alzheimer's disease or the plaque in the brain. So amyloid protein was never a very good blood test, but the tau protein is turning out to be a very accurate test. And it's as accurate as having your brain cut open, but hopefully preferable. I'd rather have a blood test if I was given a choice. So why am I excited about that? Because the interesting thing about this blood test, they developed this on a population of people who genetically were predisposed. They had a genetic mutation that predisposed them to getting Alzheimer's disease. And what they found with this blood test on this group of people was that they were able to accurately predict that someone would develop Alzheimer's disease in 20 years. Yes, they were able to predict. I'm going to say that again because that was so exciting. With this simple blood test for tau protein, the researchers at the University of Sweden were able to predict by 20 years the onset of Alzheimer's disease. Now, you might think there's an ethical dilemma. If I was having slight memory problems, cognitive issues, and I went to the doctor and they told me in 20 years you're going to have Alzheimer's disease, I don't know if I would like that prediction, that I have an incurable disease. So there's that ethical consideration. However, on the positive side, up until now, how could researchers even begin to look for a cure for Alzheimer's if they didn't have a diagnostic tool to tell them that someone was going to get Alzheimer's or was not? So think about that for a minute. How can you even begin to create tools that will remedy Alzheimer's if you don't even know who has it? So that was very interesting to me. So I honestly think that this research is like the first step in finding a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Right now, that means that in about 2 to 3 years, this blood test should be available, and it will predict which people are going to develop Alzheimer's and which people are not. It's extremely accurate. It's over 95% accurate. And I think that will give researchers a tool to then try out different methodologies that could help someone and maybe either prevent them getting Alzheimer's at all or prolong their time before the onset of symptoms. Or maybe they would find that a certain treatment didn't help, and then they could stop looking at that treatment and put their emphasis and resources on treatments that were helping. So now at least we are able to do tests and find out who is going to get Alzheimer's in the next 20 years. And then there are functional tests to see whether or not it's begun. And now I think researchers can really start to look for some cures or some ways to offset the beginning and maybe prolong your healthy lifespan before Alzheimer's sets in. Anyway, if you're interested in this research, by all means, go ahead and look into it. This is July 2020. This research came out. And again, it was in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. So I hope that if you're interested in this topic, you can now go ahead and look into it a little bit more. And good luck to the researchers. I hope they start to find some things that will help as a cure for Alzheimer's disease. If you or a loved one is afflicted with Alzheimer's disease, my heart goes out to you. I know it's a really challenging condition. And it's quite depressing to watch a loved one succumb to that disease. So I definitely feel for you. But for people who are well and healthy right now, look after yourself. And I hope that you'll have a wonderful week or weekend and take care of yourself and come back and see more of our health and wellness tips. Thanks so much. Goodbye. Remember to try my other playlists. Each one is like a 1-hour class in the studio. And check out my other videos, including health and wellness tips, product reviews, and more. See you soon.